All right, for all of you attending, it's 9 o'clock, but I'm going to give it just one more minute while we let everyone kind of work through the kinks of a webinar. So hold on tight and then we'll get started shortly. Okay, we're officially at the 9:01 mark, so we'll go ahead and kick it off. Good morning, everyone. My name is Angela Foos. I'm the Assistant Director for Development Services here at the City of Reno. Also with us is Lauren Knox, and she's our Senior Planner, also with Development Services. We also have Lance Ferrado, who's not in the picture, but he's from our Business License Department, in case we have any questions specific to business license and live entertainment. So I'm going to go ahead and do a shared screen with the group. Okay. So thank you again for everyone for joining us this morning. Our purpose for today is to hold our first of a series of 3 meetings on the topic of live entertainment and looking at our current regulations and getting some community input on, is it working, what's not working, and what can we do to improve? So we wanted to kind of start with giving everyone an overview of what our current zoning regulations are and some of the challenges we have with them. And we've heard kind of mixed reviews, both from the business and operators that deal with live entertainment and from the residents that deal with, I would say, the impacts of probably noise and crowds and the other side of what we get with live entertainment. So we're going to look at kind of both sides. So to start with, again, kind of why are we doing this today and what prompted this? So the topic of live entertainment has been going on for quite some time here at the City of Reno. I would say it's really gained a lot of momentum within the last probably 8 months or so, as we've held a couple community meetings, gotten feedback from different groups. And we went to council in June and we said, here's some of the conversations we're having, both again with businesses and operators that do live entertainment and residents that feel the impact of that live entertainment. And council said, well, let's go out and get some specific input on some very directed topics. So while there's a lot of things to discuss around live entertainment, the purpose of these 3 stakeholder meetings this week is very targeted. So this isn't a one size fits all. Again, council kind of gave us some very specific direction on a couple topics. So the first point we wanted to share is, well, what is live entertainment? The City of Reno regulates live entertainment from a zoning perspective. And so we say, first of all, well, what constitutes as live entertainment? If I have maybe a restaurant and there's somebody playing a guitar in the background, is that live entertainment? Yes. Really anything that involves somebody doing something specific, such as singing or dancing or a band or even trivia, where there's somebody actually physically doing something that's bringing people out to watch or dance or observe or partake, that would be considered live entertainment. If you have, let's say, a bar and you have music in the background, just the fact that you have music playing in the background is not live entertainment. You can go to the grocery store and there's music playing in the background. That's not live entertainment. But when people are coming to that bar and they're dancing because there's music being played, that then becomes the live entertainment piece. We wanted to go into what are the rules today. And this is, again, specific to our zoning code, so not necessarily specific to what police enforces or other regulations. So specific to Title 18 or zoning code, we have some rules. Anything indoors that involves live entertainment requires a conditional use permit after 11 o'clock. So that is citywide. Anywhere in the city, whether you're a restaurant, a coffee shop, a bar, anything you do after 11 p.m. with live entertainment triggers having to go through that conditional use permit process. That's indoor. Separately, we have outdoor. So if you have maybe a band playing outside, or again, somebody playing a guitar while your patrons are outside dining, anything past 10 p.m. outdoors triggers a conditional use permit. Separate from that, we also have, I would call these these one-offs. We have special event permits, special activity permits. That's when we have maybe a band coming in for the weekend and they're going to play at the Believe Plaza, such as this past weekend. Or you have something that's really just a one-off. You would have to go through a separate process, and we call that a special event or a special activity. And so that goes through a separate process, different from that conditional use permit. We do have some rules today already in our zoning code, so this is standard. Every business that applies for a cabaret license or does live entertainment has to follow these rules. So if you have an existing business, your doors and windows have to be closed after 10 p.m. That's just standard code, nothing unique about that. We also require, if you're going to do live entertainment, that you come up with, we call it a queuing plan. So if you have people lined up to get into your establishment, we want to make sure that you're controlling that line. A lot of times it's, midnight and people have been drinking and they get a little unruly. Sometimes it can become unsafe because they're kind of spilling over into the street. So we do require that you have some kind of queuing plan if you have a business that's going to have people lined up to get in. And then for the outdoor component, and this is citywide. If you're going to do outdoor, singing, dancing, bands, live entertainment, if you're within 150 feet of residentially zoned property, then you have to go through a conditional use permit. If you're indoors, again, you don't have to go through a conditional use permit as long as it's before 11 p.m. But outdoors, just citywide, if you're doing live entertainment outside and you're within 150 feet of residential zoning, then you do have to go through that extra conditional use permit process. We do have a fairly new, I would say, checklist item. We are now requiring a security plan. And so that's triggered when you would come in for your conditional use permit. And this gives us a little bit more teeth to be able to enforce. It's a checklist that if you come in, you say, I want to do live entertainment past 11 p.m., then we say, here's the things that we're going to need from you. And the big piece is so that we understand that we have kind of an understanding of how you are controlling the crowds and how you are controlling your patrons. And so it's written down, you give us a plan, we make sure our police department reviews it, our planning department, our code enforcement, our business license, everyone gets to kind of take a look at it. And we work with the property and the business owner to come up with a security plan that meets the needs of your business. We have found that there's not a one size fits all for security plans. Some businesses may have, crowds go until 4 o'clock in the morning and maybe they get a little bit rowdier. So maybe they need to beef up their security versus somebody else who's maybe doing, just poetry reading after 11 o'clock, and you probably don't have the same crowds. So you don't have the same issues. So we have this checklist. Again, this is standard. We're now making any new conditional use permit trigger come in and have to go through this requirement. And again, we work with the business to make sure it kind of tailors to their needs. So let's talk about challenges. Some of the things we've heard from the business community of what's maybe not working or what we could improve upon. So that conditional use permit that we talked about, that is something that you would apply for through the city planning department. It's about a $5,000 fee. So you just apply for it. That's not guaranteed you're going to receive it. You have to go through about a 3-month review process where you submit your application, you show us how your business plan works. And then we take it through a 3-month process where all the different departments get to review it. Everyone from the fire department, the building department, again, planning, zoning, everyone takes a look and makes sure that it conforms to our rules and our codes and our regulations. And the challenge is that it's not certain that you'll be approved. So you pay that $5,000, you go through that 3-month review process. Ultimately, it's up to a planning commission to approve or deny or add conditions, and that whatever the outcome of that can be appealed to city council. So I think concerns that we're hearing generally from the business and the operators is that it's expensive. It's always scary to go in as a business owner with uncertainty. Are you going to be approved? Are you going to put all this money into something and then be denied? Or are there going to be conditions added that make your business not viable? What if there's a condition added that says, we're only going to let you go till midnight in terms of live entertainment. And you may say, as a business owner, well, that certainly does not meet my needs as a business. So I just spent all this time and spent all this money going through this process. And at the end of the day, I didn't get approved. So there's been some challenges with that. On the other side of it, a conditional use permit runs forever with the land. So as new businesses come in, they have to follow that same set of rules that was placed on business operator number one. And for a new business coming in that maybe wants to be a bar and operate maybe differently than the previous bar, they're stuck with that same set of rules. And they may say, well, that doesn't really fit my needs. So they would have to go back and they would have to amend that conditional use permit. And I will say, historically, we have found over time conditional use permits that were approved maybe a decade ago. The rules we had in place then maybe don't make sense today because we do business differently. So we are running into some problems with rules that we put on businesses, 5 years ago, 10 years ago, may not still be applicable or may just not work for today's businesses. Some other challenges we're having is the enforcement side. I think there's maybe a misconception on who enforces what, misperception. The police department does not enforce our zoning code. That is not what they look at. So who enforces the zoning code? Well, our code enforcement team enforces the rules that we put on a business in terms of that conditional use permit or our zoning code. So the challenges with that is the police is out there, from a public safety perspective, trying to make sure the streets are safe. Our code enforcement team, they generally don't operate at night. They're more of a standard daytime schedule, not on weekends unless we want to pay them overtime. So it makes it tough because we have these different enforcement groups out there and they're enforcing different things. From a business license perspective, we want to make sure you're following the rules tied to your cabaret business license or just your business license itself. And again, from a code enforcement perspective, they're not out at midnight on a Saturday making sure that you're complying. So as a great example, let's say we had a conditional use permit for one bar, and let's say they can stay open until 3 a.m. And maybe they have regulations on noise that they can only be a certain noise level. But maybe the bar next door can stay open all night and do live entertainment all night and has no restrictions on noise. So from an enforcement perspective, it's become very, very challenging for our staff, whether it's police or business license or code enforcement, to have to enforce all these different rules between different businesses from literally one bar to the next or one business to the next when everybody has a different set of rules. So what do we do to trying to fix that? Again, over the past year or so, we've been trying to look for ways to just internally, we can make this process better. So one thing we're doing is when you come in for a conditional use permit, we're trying to be more consistent on what rules or conditions we place on that project. So we're not trying to pinpoint and say, business number one, you can stay open till 2 a.m. Maybe business number two next door, you have to close at 4 a.m. Again, we're trying to be consistent and work with the businesses themselves to say, how do you want to operate? And let's make your security plan that you wrote fit specific to your business needs. Secondly is that security plan. We don't have to have the ability to really grandfather or require all businesses that we've approved in the past to come in for a security plan. We can't just say, here's the new rule today, everyone has to do it. So that makes it tough too, because some businesses do have a security plan and we can follow up and make sure they're complying, while other businesses do not have a security plan. So it's a free for all in terms of what they have agreed to or not agreed to do. Now the fun part, questions for the community. When we went to council and we talked to them about some of these issues, they came back and they said, well, I want to know what the community thinks about maybe some options for moving forward. So they said, go back out, get some targeted feedback on these specific questions. And so that's why we're here today. Number one then is on this live entertainment conditional use permit. Again, some of the feedback we've heard is that it's expensive, it takes a long time, and there's the uncertainty. What if we didn't require a conditional use permit and instead we just put rules in place that every business that did live entertainment had to follow? So it was a consistent set of rules. It wasn't case by case. So that's question number one. How do we feel about that? The downside is that sometimes there are unique situations where then maybe you're at a bar in downtown and maybe there's, you know, a lot of residential nearby, and maybe we do need to have some specific rules on that particular establishment. So that kind of takes the ability of staff to put in some specific rules, and it takes it out of that public hearing process. So it goes straight to a permit and the public doesn't get to weigh in on it. That's the give and take. Second question is related to the security plans. So we've thought about the idea that the security plan's actually working because it gives some teeth for us to enforce, to say, here's the rules that you agree to. And again, each business owner would come in with their own security plan. So it doesn't live forever with the property, it lives with the business. So as a new business comes in, new operator comes in, they have to submit their own security plan. So one idea is that we tie that security plan to their annual review of their cabaret license. So that becomes more of a business license kind of a role rather than a zoning. And again, all the different departments would still get to weigh in. The operator get to submit their own security plan and make it unique to their business and how they operate. Again, if you're a business that has a rowdy crowd and you've got, you know, dancing and drinking going on all hours of the night, your security plan is probably going to be very different than somebody who's maybe open till midnight and is not having loud, crazy kind of crowds. You probably don't need the same level of security. So question then for the community, how do we feel if we then tied this to each operator when they came in at the time of their annual review for their cabaret license? We said you would submit it to the city. It does not go through a public hearing process. We would, again, work with our different departments and work with that business to see if we can put some rules in place that are specific to your business needs. Some of the things, comments we've gotten from the community is, why are we not being stricter on the bad operators? When I say bad operators, when it comes to live entertainment, these are operators that, you know, if we have to have the police show up every Saturday night because there's fighting or because there's weapons, they continually get in trouble for serving underage minors. These, I would say, are considered bad operators, and should we be stricter on making sure that they stop? Stop could either mean we take away their license, their cabaret license, or potentially we take away their business license. So this whole idea of, you know, 3 strikes and you're out, is that working, or is that something that we should be stronger at enforcing? In terms of next steps, we have 3 community meetings. They're all virtual. This is the first one. We have another one on Tuesday and another one on Thursday. We do also have a community survey, and that's really how we're hoping to get the most feedback. There's a couple of targeted questions, again, that council had asked us to follow up with the community on. And then we have kind of some other comments. So if you have other things that you want to bring up, questions, comments, concerns, this is where you would fill in that information. And then we'll take that feedback and go back to city council later this fall and say, here's generally what the community thinks about our existing rules, areas that we can improve upon, or things that maybe we need to be more strict on, or maybe more relaxed on. And then we'll get some direction from council on how they want to proceed. And that may mean that we have to go back out and change our zoning code to make the rules different. It may mean that we put in some new policies on how we deal with cabaret licenses at the business license perspective, or it may mean we do nothing. Again, this is kind of where we're looking for your guys' feedback to see, are there things we could do better or different? And we want to take that information back to council. So we do have information on our city website where you can fill out that community survey. Our website can sometimes be difficult to navigate. So here's my email address. If you have questions and want to get a link sent to you by email, I'm happy to do that. My last name is Foos. First name is a@reno.gov. Okay, and that is it. What we'd like to do now is open it up to questions, comments, and Lauren is going to help us move. Anyone that wants to come over, you can just wave your virtual hand and we'll take one person at a time, bring you on in for questions, comments. And again, the best way for us to get feedback is to respond to that community survey, because at least then we have something in writing and it's not us trying to put words in your mouth on what your comments were. So the best way for us to share that feedback is to fill out that community survey or to send us an email, and we can capture that in writing. Okay, we're just going to give it another minute or so. I see a couple of hands popping up.
All right, and also, so I'll start doing the allow to talk function for those who have raised their hands. But before we do that, there's also the chat function. If you want to enter a question, if you're having audio issues, that's another way that you can communicate during this meeting. So let me go ahead and start the list here. We have Edward first. You should be able to unmute now.
Okay, can you hear me now? Okay,
Yes.
We can.
good on my side. Okay, my question, number one, security. What if you have a operator that decides that the Hells Angels are a good security option?
So
You have to-
is the question something about the Hells Angels?
The question is, you say provide security.
Mhm.
Okay, I remember an incident many years ago where the security was the Hells Angels. Is that acceptable to the city of Reno?
So we're not specific on who provides your security. It's more of a plan of how they do it. So for instance, we've got a couple businesses that have security plans that talk about how they do pat downs to look for weapons, and how they do screening to make sure that you have a driver's license that or an ID card that shows that you're legally over the age of 21. So we don't get into the specifics of who's providing the security. It's more of how are you providing security and where are they stationed? We require training of what happens if there's a fight. How do you guys handle it? So those are the kinds of things that we look for in the security plan.
Okay, and a quick follow-up. Do you have a written proposal for council on this next meeting?
We do not. Nope. At this point, there's nothing proposed. We're just getting community feedback on information in terms of what's working, what's not. Are there things that you would like to see changed, or are you happy with the way that we regulate live entertainment as it is?
Okay, so your timeline is basically you present a proposal to the city council hopefully this month, and then you're back to the drawing board for a while after post direction of the council, or will it be passed in this next meeting as proposed?
Yeah, so the question was kind of next steps and timeline. We have 3 virtual meetings being held this week, and then later this fall, I don't have a specific council date, but probably in November-ish. We'll go back to city council and share the information, the feedback we had, and see what direction they want us to go in terms of, do we want to make changes? And keep in mind too, if council gives us direction to make changes, that basically kickstarts us to go through another multi-month public review process. So just because they say, yep, we want you to make changes, nothing goes into code. We then start the next level of review process, which still requires that we go to all the neighborhood advisory boards, we hold more community meetings, we go to the planning commission, and then we go to city council. So nothing happens overnight when you're dealing with government. This is just, I would say, the first step to see if council wants us to do anything.
Yeah, I get that. Thank you. All right, that's it for my questions right now then.
Okay, great.
Thank you.
Okay, so next we have Tyler. You should be able to unmute now.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Hi, Angela. Thank you for a nice outline of the current situation. As a bar owner, and I've been very active in this, so I want to bring up a couple points. So you talked about, the security plan and that each business would have something different. However, we all would pay the same price. It's like we're all paying the same fee, yet it's kind of arbitrary who would have to enforce what at a different cost for each small business. So it isn't really creating a level playing field and putting each business at jeopardy of, once again, potentially not being able to open or operate. And with the deficit of $25 million at the Reno budget, I would think it'd be in the best interest of the city to get most businesses equal level playing field and get it to a yes so that we can generate more revenue. You talked about code isn't out on the weekends, but code is out on the weekends. And whether you had a conditional use permit or not, you still have enforcement with a live entertainment or cabaret license to take away. You still have enforcement with a privilege license to take away, and you still have enforcement with a business license to take away. So adding the conditional use permit isn't one more thing, you know, it's just another add-on for a small business that doesn't really level the playing field. And it does stifle growth for small businesses when we are seeing cafes going and restaurants going past 11 o'clock with entertainment now. You know, this new generation really is looking for entertainment and requiring that as we evolve. Gen Z is a whole new beast, you know, and so it's costing small businesses entertainment, trivia, music later at night past 11 o'clock. And that, like you said, it could be poetry. It could just be a person playing guitar in the corner of a coffee shop. You know, but as things we're having to do as small businesses in this current economy and with this new generation, so those extra costs and unknowing if you will actually receive your conditional use permit put small businesses at a disadvantage. The other thing that's really kind of, I want to clarify as well. When we talk about the patrons that are out front in our security plans, there's been a lot of conversation of people over serving or certain fights. So the thing is, we see someone may have been kicked out of another bar or asked to leave because they might have been intoxicated, or we believe they're getting over, they were denied a drink. So they'll leave. And by that point, they're triggered a little bit. So they might walk up in front of your bar, run into somebody and start an argument, which did not come from your bar. So it's really difficult to show that that fight came from your establishment when it might have happened in front of your establishment. The other thing I really need to point out to people to understand, when these people and these fights are occurring, they're occurring in public spaces, public property. As business owners, we pay a hefty fee, and especially bars, to have our liability and insurances that protect our patrons within our property. Once they enter into public spaces, we cannot touch somebody, legally do something, because we then jeopardize a lawsuit because that happened in a public space, not the business's space. And it isn't always true that it's coming from that. And when we ask somebody to leave our space, we know they might be already intoxicated or have arrived intoxicated. And most often when we say we will not serve you, they go outside and they're now in a public space. They have left our private space. They've been escorted out. They're triggered. And we cannot be liable for what is happening with a lot of younger people who are ending up in front of other businesses or have been asked to leave and now are causing trouble or violence or something in the public space, which we cannot enforce legally.
Yeah, and I think Tyler brings up a really good point of, you know, let's say you are being a good operator and you're choosing not to serve that person who's intoxicated. What happens after they leave the establishment is no longer within your control. So how can we do a better job of handling those people that maybe got intoxicated somewhere else, but are now out wandering and causing problems? And that kind of goes back to the bigger issue of, you know, how do we deal with having being a 24-hour town where we allow drinking 24/7. That's part of the challenge, I think, that we at the city are dealing with, of how do we better control some, even just the bad players, not the bad businesses, but the bad drinkers, or whatever they're into at the time that's causing those problems in those public spaces. So 100%, not necessarily an issue for the bars to figure out, but something we are struggling with just as a city with, you know, challenges with budget as well.
What I'd also say, following up on that, is what you said. We're a 24-hour drinking town, and a lot of this bad actors are coming from later night because they have been drinking. What is in front of us is live entertainment, and that is trivia, that is dancing, that is just music, you know. So one is live entertainment doesn't cause the bad behavior. So we need to make sure we're really discussing the live entertainment code. And people also need to understand is that the conditional use permit falls under the planning department, and we currently have zones that are 24-hour entertainment zones that allow bars to operate and have cocktails or drinking 24 hours. But we also have zones like Wells Avenue. They must stop at 11 o'clock by the way the planning code is laid out. So then if we move into then the business code, that changes into our cabaret license. That's under business code. So we're literally talking about two different departments that are trying to create legislation or enforcement around the same business from two different perspectives.
So then Tyler, in terms of kind of, I would say, your proposal for how to fix this, can you provide some insight on what you would like to see?
I think that the planning code already lays out which districts, that being 4th Street, downtown, and through Midtown, as a 24-hour condition or 24-hour entertainment zones. If within those zones, and we already have, the city's already agreed and has it as part of their code, that those businesses would be allowed that current privilege, which we believe has been taken away, to, once they receive their cabaret license, can operate with live entertainment within the 24-hour code that exists within planning. And then if any of those other districts, so if you're in South Reno, North Reno, they have to go till 11 p.m. That is what code says within development. So if they then want to go later, then they would need the conditional use permit unless they want to change that code in planning. So I feel like the way it's already laid out is pretty clear, and that the law that was put in Title 18 back in January 2021 kind of took a level playing field away from business that already existed. It was already there. And so now I think that's what complicated things. It's almost resetting it back to the way it was. You know, people talk about enforcement, but there was plenty of ways to enforce it. And in the past, it always really has been, if you're a bad actor, we are going to give you 1, 2, 3 strikes. We can take away your privilege license. And the other bigger problem is, and you brought this up, is when you have that conditional use permit, it's with the property, the land. It isn't with the person. And like you said, you might have a coffee shop that was there and they had their conditional use permit and security plan based on a coffee shop that just wanted to go 1 hour later till midnight. And it's very relaxed. And now a nightclub opens up in that space. It's going to go to 6 a.m. and they wouldn't be required to have the same security plan as the next business. And so it really should be based on the business. And that, once again, I think that can be done through business code in the business department. And this shouldn't be a planning issue. Businesses shouldn't have to go talk to planning and development. We have a business department, and I think that that's where these matters should really be handled. And on the other thing is the outdoor. Closing our windows at 10, you know, I think Reno has an identity problem. We need to figure out, on weekends in other cities, we see Austin, we see Boise that is just like us. You want a lively entertainment district where the windows can be open on a beautiful Saturday, Sunday, Monday, weekday, past 10 o'clock on a spring, fall day, and the doors are open and it's lively and people are enjoying themselves. And we have beautiful streets in Midtown. We're trying to fix downtown. People should want to come out, enjoy our streets, walk around. We need more community and people walking around and enjoying our streets. So when you say close up the doors and lock everything, that isn't creating anything lively or entertainment, you know? And we see that J Resorts also has been allowed with their festival to go to midnight. So once again, the casinos are getting leverage on small businesses that were not allotted the same respect or, once again, a level playing field. So I think 11 o'clock or midnight for outdoor entertainment, closing your windows is so silly. And as you know, there are many businesses downtown and some in Midtown that don't have air conditioning. So in summer, their cooling component is open their doors and windows for a cross breeze and have in writing that that is okay. You know, and it just seems really silly when you kind of say, oh, close your windows, but we don't have air conditioning, you know, for some of these older buildings. And so
Yep.
that becomes difficult as well.
Perfect. All right. Thank you, Tyler.
Thank you.
All right, so next we have Nicole. All right, you should be able to unmute on your end. Oh,
Can you guys hear me?
yes, we can.
Okay, wonderful. Okay, I just wanted a clarification question. You kind of posed two questions that both seem like they would update the regulations or mandate the security plan for all businesses, including existing operating cabaret licenses. I wanted to just make sure that that was the message that you were giving, is that one of these proposals may be that even if you've been functioning with no strikes successfully, what have you, with your cabaret license, now you would be required to add more to that when you do your renewal.
Yeah, so that's a question that that is the question we're asking is, should we ask these existing businesses, not today, but let's say you have to come in for your annual review, so everyone comes in at a different time. When you come in for your annual review, if you have a cabaret license, that at that time you would submit your security plan. And is that something that the city should pursue?
Okay, and I guess I'm just wondering because there are a lot of, successful businesses that have been running without transgressions. Like, right, they've been successfully operating, and I worry about maybe some of the staffing constraints of a business that is seeing people come all the time for live music, but there are no fights, like having them employ brand new people to staff for the security. I'm wondering if there's any way that there can be some mediation between that if you're not a business that's had issues. Just, I know that's supposed to be differentiated, but I just worry that there are existing businesses that have been operating successfully. I mean, for years now, they're an institution, and now they're going to have to hire more people for a business operation that just doesn't doesn't require more people now. So I
Yes.
guess looking for some kind of balance, I don't know what it is, but I don't know. I just think of a couple businesses that we work with that this is how they operate and they haven't had issues. So if there's a way to differentiate that and allow them to continue, I think upon the renewal, the new business is like having, or whoever the new business is, if they buy it, they're starting a new process. But if you have an existing framework that's working, some kind of, I don't want to call it an exception, but some kind of consideration for what has been working, I think would be a wonderful addition.
Yeah, and 100%. I think kind of where we were looking is not to mandate that you have to put in a security guard. The idea is that there's some basic things, right, that all businesses could do if they're operating with live entertainment, but we definitely didn't want to add that you have to put in security staffing. If you have a nightclub business and you're going till, 4, 5, 6 in the morning, and you have patrons that tend to be, I would say, drinking more and getting into probably more getting into fights or things where you need crowd control, then that would be one type of security. If you're another security or another business that maybe has bands occasionally, but again, it's not more of your rowdy crowd, it's not till 6 in the morning crowd. You obviously would operate very differently from a security perspective, and maybe you don't even need security. So that's something where we would like to give the ability for businesses to tell us what works best for them. And then again, we'd kind of review everyone case by case through our different departments and just make sure that we're all on the same page of how things are being regulated. So we definitely don't want to mandate that you guys have to do anything that's going to cost you more employees or security. But when we get into situations where we're getting called every weekend because there's fights, inside the bar, right outside the bar. Those are the kinds of, I would say, challenges we have where maybe you need to create a security plan that brings in more security or changes the ways your security guards are operating. So by having a security plan that is specific to your business, it allows us as the city and you as the business operator kind of figure out a plan that works best.
I appreciate that. And I understand the intent. I think what was good for me in this is that there's more transparency about what that security plan would look like.
Yeah.
And I think there's some fear from business owners that this is going to be debilitating. So I think maybe it's an educational campaign about what that security plan, you're just a basic operation, you're not a nightclub, what that security plan looks like, what the cost and timeline of fulfilling the, the submission of that, I think would alleviate a lot of the fear behind, oh my gosh, there's this brand new thing for my business to do.
Yeah.
So I think part of that is maybe just bridging the gap in communication on that. Because what I'm hearing is that it's not nearly as scary as I thought it was.
No, we hope it's not.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thanks, Nicole.
All right. Next, we have Patrick. You should be able to talk now.
Can you hear me?
We can.
Okay, great. Thanks for putting this on, Angela. Appreciate it.
Sure.
Like Tyler said, there's been a lot of conversations about this stuff in the past, so it's good to keep it moving and keep talking. My general position on when it comes to planning and code, and specifically live entertainment and conditional use permits, is more hardened with facts than it was a year ago when this came up, I think. I do firmly believe that, like Tyler mentioned, this is something that the business license side should handle. It shouldn't be a planning and zoning entitlement based. I think that you get into a lot of issues with that because it does run with the property. And whenever Title 18 is updated or changed, which happens every 3 or 4 years for as long as I've lived here, it always says essentially the conforming use before doesn't need a CUP, it stays conforming. And because it runs with the property, there's a whole issue of whose right are you infringing or taking or modifying. So it's the same reason when Title 18 changes, which has to do with building as well, if the setback for a building is now 20 feet, we don't demolition the buildings that are 10 feet away from the street. So the same thing kind of applies here. I operate a business, Alturas Bar, that's been there for, I don't know, Reno Tahoe magazine says like 80 or 90 or 100 years or something. So we've been there forever. So as these things have changed, just like a lot of other businesses, that property has a lot of entitlements. I don't think you could build that property today because the new code says, you need a setback from the street and you need this parking, you need that, and on and on and on. But we're not going to tear down that building. I think it's a part of history. So the problem we get into is, while business license can update regulations, and they have to go through a long process with that to update how they regulate each licensee. And I have a privileged license, just like most people who would apply for a cabaret, for live entertainment with our liquor service. The people who don't have that, there's a big question of whether you could even enforce a cabaret or music licensing because it gets into free speech. Tying it to a privilege license is generally how cities regulate this because it is a privilege to have a liquor service or gaming or other things we make legal here. But the problem is when we go from a planning and zoning perspective, I'm of the firm opinion, and I think the law's on my side in this, that when you take something that used to be allowed and change it from a planning and zoning side, there has to be really, really good reasons for that, or else it's literally a taking, which then ends up in taking of rights, taking of value, similar to eminent domain, and then someone has to pay for that value. So because there's a loss. And in this case, the loss can be the business owner who's currently operating. The loss can be the property owner who is not operating the business, but leases to them.
Yeah.
So requiring a CUP for an existing operating function from a commercial landlord's perspective, I think is challenging, and they're going to have issues with it. And the operator, who's a licensee for the business side of that, will have problems with that. So I think the perspective of providing regulation in terms of zoning and planning, like Tyler mentioned, there are zones, there are areas. We have places where you can operate 24/7. We have places where if you want to operate past a certain time, if you're in DeMonte Ranch or in the suburbs or something, apply for a conditional use permit. So I think that the regulation of this, if it's needed, should come from business license, not planning and zoning. And I think that there'll be far less issues with that. That being said, I think that with our current framework, we've got a function that we've seen bad actors in town who, lost their license, unfortunately, because, they couldn't follow the rules. So when we get into those things, that's where the city comes together and says, we have a framework, we do have a privileged license we can pull. We do have a variety of other licenses we can enforce, and that's where it comes into play. So I think
Yeah.
that regulating it from a planning and zoning Title 18 perspective is going to be extremely challenging.
Mhm.
And I think also, the root issue is a small minority of actors who are already being dealt with. So I would ask, is this, a solution looking for a problem? And beyond that, when it comes to existing operators, there's some of the proposals might make sense in some scenarios, but again, when you apply for a business license, you apply for a cabaret, you apply for a liquor license, there's a whole process within that to evaluate your space, just like fire comes in and looks at it, just like health comes in and looks at it, just like you have to make sure that it's planned and zoned correctly in your departments. And that's where I think these kind of individual plans are already existing in some manner. I've seen business license requires security plans of various operators in some capacity. Do we need more teeth on that? I don't know, but that doesn't sit with planning and zoning in my mind. So
Yep.
that's my general perspective.
Perfect.
Thank you.
Thank you, Patrick. All right, and Lauren, are you seeing any other hands raised?
I am not seeing any other hands raised at this time, and I don't see anything in the chat box. Oh, we've got one more. Let's see. Oh, it went away. There we go. All right, Jonathan, you should be unlocked on our end.
Okay, thanks. I just wanted to follow up on Patrick's question there about kind of what's prompting this. I'm hearing a lot from the folks here that a lot of issues there are practices in place, but I just want to hear from your perspective why, kind of why are we looking at this right now? Is there some particular incident that I'm not aware of? And just so you know, my stake in this is operations manager with Sierra School of Performing Arts, who's involved in doing theater productions, some of which, I think they would probably classify it as live performances, and some of them are outside, like at Bartley Ranch, which is of course owned by the county, which brings a whole host of other questions about who would actually be filing the plan and when people just come through all the time. But anyway, I really wanted to know what, from your side, why are you wanting to pursue those?
Yeah, I would say we don't want to pursue anything. Make that clear. No, I think our job as staff is to address concerns. And so we've had concerns from both sides of the live entertainment fence, I would say. As we came out of COVID, everything was shut down during COVID, there was no live entertainment. And so things were really quiet. And then as we've kind of picked back up and life's come back to somewhat normal, we have a lot more people living in downtown. And so we have a lot of, I would say, frustrations with some of the residents, more specifically in downtown, not so much midtown, but we get complaints from there as well. Concerns about, can we do anything to, I would say, fix the nuisance from noise, loud cars at 2 o'clock in the morning, loud crowds at, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 o'clock in the morning. Can we do something when they're spilling onto the street because, drunken crowds? So there's kind of that perspective of, can the city do something to address some of those concerns? And on the other side, we're hearing from all these businesses that want to open and want to have live entertainment saying, why is it so hard to do this in Reno? We were a 24-hour town, and now we have to go through this conditional use permit. It's costing me $5,000. I'm a small business. I just want to open. So we're hearing, I would say, concerns from both ends saying we should be more flexible with live entertainment. And can we do more to, kind of protect the nuisance side of live entertainment. So we're trying to find a happy median to say, we hear both of you, both residents, because we definitely want residents in downtown. We definitely want businesses in downtown and midtown. So how do we address both concerns? Because we're hearing it very loud from both sides. I guess I would say what we have now doesn't feel like it's working. The businesses feel like we are too tough, and it's expensive. And why are we requiring all these rules and regulations when we should be supporting businesses? And again, from the residents, they're saying, why aren't we doing more to encourage people to want to live downtown when they're, I think, frustrated because they're dealing with the noise and the drinking and the crowds and just kind of the other aspect that we tend to see with live entertainment late in the wee hours of the morning.
Thank you.
All right, it looks like we have Tyler, you should be able to unmute now.
Okay, I just wanted to follow up on that comment you just said, Angela. We do hear a lot of the noises coming, or not noise, the residents of downtown. I think you guys are in a difficult position that policy should not be dictated from a section of Reno of a handful of residents that live downtown for the entire city of Reno, because that is what's happened. So if we're having an area that is where it's happening, so then maybe there needs to be something different within that entertainment corridor. But I think that it's really not healthy to say, oh, we're going to put this code over the entire city of Reno based on this small district.
And fair. I mean, maybe we need to have separate rules in our downtown or more of our entertainment areas. I think that's another thing that's kind of been discussed is, should we be more flexible for live entertainment in those kind of downtown entertainment areas? Or again, should we be more restrictive because we
Right.
have residents moving in? So that there's the rub between.
And there
That's
is
the
the
right
rub,
answer.
we talk about, there's a lot of complaint about the noise downtown. In Midtown, we don't really get too much complaints. Everybody's really pretty good actors. And we close up shop in Midtown a little bit earlier than downtown for the most
Yeah.
part. But if we're going to talk about noise, I mean, we have hot August nights, we have street vibrations. These events produce a lot of noise downtown, so then how do you address that? It really becomes a slippery slope. And I want to make sure that we're not talking about noise ordinances in this meetings. This is really about code, business code, cabaret license, privilege license, and noise should be addressed separately and considered separately because that is a bigger swath of all the city, especially with events, and to say, oh, small businesses are required these noise ordinances, yet these street vibrations is not required any noise ordinance. And we know how much noise when they're here for an entire week, what that creates downtown.
Absolutely. Yep. Thanks for that, Taylor.
Yeah, appreciate it, Angela.
Okay, anyone else?
Okay, so maybe just to follow up then, kind of where we're at. Like I said, we're going to hold 2 more meetings. They're going to be the exact same presentation. We just tried to make sure we could have meetings depending on different people's schedules. So we have today at 9, Tuesday is at noon, I believe, and Thursday is at 6 p.m. So whether you're a night person, a day person, hopefully we can get you to attend and review one of our meetings. And then if you're not able to make any of them, we are going to put all of the recordings on our website so you can go back and watch or share with anyone that maybe wasn't able to attend. And the biggest thing that we can get is, again, we need something in writing from you what your opinion is, because I can take away what I think you said today, but it's a lot easier for us to say, here's specifically the words that you put on a piece of paper, how you either like our regulations, want them changed, things, again, what can we do to make it better for both businesses, the operators, the property owners, and residents. So next week, we'll hopefully be able to take all the information from the survey, and then we'll put it in a staff report and share it with council and then get feedback. And likely that will be in November, but I'm not going to commit to a date just because things change. But that's kind of the timeline that we're aiming for. So I appreciate everyone taking the hour today. And like I said, if you have questions, feel free to reach out. You had my email, thusa@reno.gov, and I'm happy to forward that survey link if you're not able to find it on our website. Thank you, everyone, and I hope you have a great week.